Welcome into the Just Basketball Show. I am Chris Manning. That is Brendon Kleen. If you haven't already, subscribe or follow on your podcast platform of choice. 5-star reviews only. Hit that subscribe button on our Just Basketball Fans YouTube channel as well. Big show today. Damian Lillard has finally asked out. James Harden also wants out, but maybe he's going to stay. Lord knows what's going on there. We're going to go through our surprising free agency moves and extensions, and we're going to pick best lineups for Team USA now that we know the roster. Brendon, I want to first tell everyone about our friends at Homage. If you don't know, Homage is the ultra-comfortable specialty apparel company that uses vintage-inspired designs to match the greatest stories, traditions, and figures across sports, music, and pop culture. They have a ton of great merch. NBA, WNBA, Nickelodeon, NFL, MLB, all of those and more. You can click the link in our bio or this podcast description or on YouTube. Some of the money, if you go buy something for yourself on this 4th of July, they think they have a sale right now as well. It goes back to the Just Basketball Show, so please do that. All right, Brendon, let's start with Dame Lillard. This is where I want to frame this because everyone can talk about the packages that Miami could offer, Brooklyn could offer, or should the Spurs get involved or whatever. This is what my brain has gone. It seems like he really would prefer Miami to everything else. Based on what we have read, Miami is Dame's preferred destination. It feels to me like this is now on Miami to get enough stuff to make Portland happy.
I agree. I think that, honestly, the Kevin Durant sweepstakes from last year tell you all you need to know about what's playing out right now, in my opinion. Anything you hear at this point should be heard under the assumption that both Miami and Portland know that more likely than not, Lillard is going to the Heat. And so whatever you're hearing is negotiating tactics between those two teams. So when you initially hear from Woj that Joe Cronin intends, the GM over there intends to work with Lillard, that means we know he wants to go to Miami. When you hear him say to Woj via statement or whatever it is, we're no longer doing that, that means give us more, right? That's kind of everything that's happening here. And I think history tells us, and we talked about this with the Durant thing when the trade happened shortly after we started doing this show, when a superstar wants to go somewhere, there has never been a time in this era of player empowerment that he has not ended up where he wants to go. In the case of Kawhi Leonard, it took an extra year. That's the longest route we've ever seen it take, but they always end up where they want to go. And so I agree with you completely that the thing that's holding this up now is not only is Herro just not that appealing of a centerpiece when you look at Mikal Bridges or some of the guys, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, that have gone over in these mega trades, even Walker Kessler, frankly, Lauri Markkanen in the Gobert deal.
Markkanen becoming an all-NBA caliber forward in the Mitchell trade is sure. I mean, I like Tyler Herro. He's not going to become an all-NBA guard overnight here.
Yeah, and that's what I think is holding this up because he's just not that appealing of a centerpiece anyway, but he just doesn't fit with the Trailblazers, right? That's just kind of the weird part of this is that they just happen to have guards and wings, and that's not really something that they would have much use for is one of those that's already getting paid $27, $29, $31 million. So I agree that's what this is. You and I have been texting about hero destinations. I came up with 3 more that we haven't texted about. Do you want to dive into those right now or go through some of the other stuff first?
No, I would just, the only thing I'll say is I think the number one hero team to me, if we wanted to get have it kind of make some sense just in terms of they have a lot of picks and hero would be a nice fit for them, would be New Orleans. That would be the one that kind of jumps out to me, but even finding a deal there is this is weird. Hero's at a weird salary slot for what he is. And what is the appropriate pick value for Tyler Herro? I could see negotiations between the front office in Miami and David Griffin falling apart just because it's hard for me to say this is what Tyler Herro is exactly worth. But give me your teams. Let's go through them.
Yeah, I like New Orleans. I think you and I were going back and forth with it, and it's they don't have a lot of big salaries that aren't stars, number one. Number 2, one of those salaries is Jonas Valanciunas, which is very similar to Jusuf Nurkic, who is kind of his own holdup in this whole thing, which we can get to. And, I'm not sure how many of their young guys they're going to want to part with. I'm not sure how realistic it is. Is trading C.J. McCollum for Tyler Herro really that much of an improvement? And I think the part of it, too, when you're thinking about Herro in general is how much better is he going to get? it's just there's not a track record of this type of guy improving dramatically. Like, it just doesn't happen very often that somebody who comes into the league with this type of profile where he's really a scoring guard. He's already won Sixth Man of the Year, and that kind of tells you all you need to know about him. Is that type of guy somebody who you can bank on getting better? Maybe as a passer, maybe, you know, he rounds out his scoring game a little bit. He's already a pretty elite shooter, but that's just sort of what he is. I don't think he's going to get better defensively is really the biggest thing. He's small, right?
Can I play one devil's advocate thing here?
Sure.
I wonder if there is a part of this with Herro where we are maybe undervaluing him a little bit just because the Heat went on this run without him in the playoffs. I understand some of that, like, simplified what they were doing, and, like, he is a defensive liability to some degree, right? Like, I think that's, like, a real thing. I think maybe, like, we are undervaluing kind of what he is, considering he just was out for a while and the team he's on, like, went on a run. I think, like, sometimes, like, we can, broadly speaking, we can apply, like, causation to someone being out, and I don't always think that's fair to the player that's out, right? Like there's people that would argue, like, oh, the Cavs in the LeBron era were better without Kevin Love. That was never really true, right? Like, that's a part of this that is stuck in my mind a little bit, is that are we maybe collectively undervaluing Herro a little bit because he was out for the certain time, and is someone out there going to look at him and say, that's a guy I actually really like and I can do something with him?
Yeah, and I think that's valid. I mean, like, my test on defense especially is always, like, have you survived on good defensive teams? If you're out there and a coach that wants to put its best defensive lineup out there or its best overall lineup out there includes you in that, then, like, what am I going to say to honestly, one of those that ended up kind of playing out over time in the positive direction with Duncan Robinson, who's also on this Heat team, where it's like, we've seen it work. So I don't think Herro is some sort of lost cause. He's also not on a max contract. He's paid a little less than some of the worst contracts out there. So I don't think it's egregious. I really do just think this is somewhat of a Portland thing. So I have the Grizzlies for Brandon Clark and Luke Kennard. So he basically fills that slot of kind of what Kennard did for them after he came over at the deadline, and we saw him make a decent impact for them in the playoffs even. He's an even worse defender than Herro, in my opinion, so maybe that's actually an upgrade for them. Maybe they have to throw some other picks or something in there that would go to Portland too. The Magic, which I think I've heard other people say, that would be something like Jonathan Isaac, Cole Anthony, and Chumo Kiki, or whatever other young guy you want to put in there, and that's sort of like the thing that Anthony has kind of been doing for them as a bench scorer. You just get an upgrade on that, and you're not having to send out too much. And then the last one I had was the Celtics for Malcolm Brogdon and Peyton Pritchard, which is pretty straightforward. You're just consolidating some of those guards. We know they've been shopping Brogdon already. Boston probably has to include a pick in that. But, you know, maybe Pritchard actually does make sense for Portland, or maybe Brogdon goes to Portland and he's an expiring contract anyway, and maybe he's a buyout guy or something like that. I think those make sense because all three of those trades are taking back shorter-term salary and less guard type of players who are expensive, and maybe that makes sense for the Blazers to get some of that. Maybe even some of that goes to the Heat, and then Herro going to the team that's mentioned there. Do either of those three seem better, worse? What's the best one in your mind?
I like the Boston one, Brendon. The cost would be the concern there for me, right? Because Boston's payroll is already really high. You know, they're gonna assumedly give Jaylen Brown this, like, crazy high extension. You know, that hasn't happened yet, but, like, we kind of just have thought that's gonna happen, right? You know, look, I am really curious to see just what Boston's kind of plans are. But Herro, in terms of getting it, that would be a win for him because it's another good situation, and they would have the defensive infrastructure for him to really succeed. That part of it I'm a really big fan of in that sense, because I think it would give him the room to be himself while having not, you know, it's lesser defensive guards now because you only have one of the three guys they had last year in this hypothetical, but you still have Tatum and Brown and Derek White, and that's like a ton of defensive cover to put Herro on a stationary shooter or something like that. You could easily hide him pretty well, and they have, you know, like Porzingis and Time Lord and Horford, like they have a good defensive infrastructure there, and the scheme is we would think with Porzingis coming in and some of the guard changes, they might not switch as much next year, which I think is good for Herro. So like, I would love the Boston fit for him in terms of like what would emphasize him and what he's good at, helping him win basketball games and contribute to winning basketball games. I love that, and it would give just Boston one other person to maybe kind of help their offense get out of the mud sometimes. So that would be the one to me that I would really like if they wanted to go all in and take a page from the Suns and say what's an apron? Screw the aprons. Who needs an apron?
That is true. That is valid. I mean, in that context, they're basically sending out as much as they're taking in, but the difference is Herro's under contract long term, which I think is another complicating factor. But yeah, I like the Boston one too. I feel like all your points are well made. I feel they also, if they're sending out Pritchard, they got to get another white dude in there. That's just a Boston rule. I mean,
also,
they can't go too long without at least a few.
I like Pritchard. I think he's gonna end up somewhere and be like a pretty decent energy guard for some team who gets him. And Portland maybe isn't the. If it's Portland or Miami or wherever, I would be curious to just see what that would, how that could kind of appeal to him. I guess my question with the Boston one is, do you think that gets Miami enough stuff to then reroute to Portland to get Dame?
Well, my thing with the Herro part of it is I think the fact that he doesn't fit there, and that's the reason I emphasize that it's partially a fit problem, is more of the issue than just is there enough stuff? I don't know what else another team is giving up that's going to blow the Heat offer out of the water so much that Portland is willing to take the PR hit of not sending Dame where he goes. Where he wants to go. So I don't know if it's so much a Miami needs to make its offer better thing as it is a Miami needs to make an offer that makes more sense for the Trailblazers thing. That's kind of where I see it. So Boston, I guess then Pritchard goes there. He's also a guard. Maybe not. I think I mentioned I would imagine Boston has to send out a pick in that situation. That pick would probably go to the Blazers. Yeah, I agree. But I don't think any three of these are making the Heat's offer much better, to be honest with you. And that's part of the issue here, and I think that's why there's a little bit of a stalemate happening.
Yeah, and if I'm Portland, to bring it back, we're bringing this back to a place of Yusuf Nurkic, I guess, or just I am. I kind of would want another they don't have a center to step in and really be a center for them, but they could go get some veterans for minimums and fill out the roster and stuff if they need to. I would want Nurkic as a tax for one of these other. Getting off his money to me would be worth something. I don't know if it's worth a first, but it's worth a second or two, right? And maybe that could help the price. Nurkic also just doesn't feel like someone that Miami really has a need for, is the thing. They signed Thomas Bryant. They have Bam. Do they
Kevin Love?
They have Kevin Love. They don't need Nurkic. Where's the Nurkic? Is Nurkic even able to get rerouted somewhere? Another team with cap space? This gets really complicated very quickly.
The way that I had it with Nurkic is, if I'm Miami, the way I'm looking at this, because Caleb Martin has been the other kind of sticking point out there, right, is Miami just doesn't want to include him, which I actually get, because if you look at their roster, like you just mentioned, they're heavy on bigs.
They need him.
They need wings.
They need him, yeah.
They badly need wings and forwards. I mean, Josh Richardson might be starting for this team.
Well, and look, and let's think about this from just a regular season management perspective. We know Jimmy is going to miss some time. We just know he is. That's going to happen.
Yeah.
Dame is 33. You probably don't need to put his foot on the gas for the whole regular season. They just need competent bodies so they're not accidentally the 6th seed or something, right? Yes, they just did make the play-in and make the finals. I get that. But replicating that over and over again, even if you add someone of Dame's caliber, it's just not an optimal way to do it. It's just really, it makes it much, much harder on yourself if you go that way.
I have one Miami question on that note to close us out on this segment, but where I was going with the Nurkic thing is I would be looking at it if I'm the Heat as either I'm taking back Nurkic or I'm including Caleb Martin. That would be kind of my negotiating stance if I'm Pat Riley and Andy Ellisberg and those guys is we're fine to take back Nurkic if it means we get Lillard, but you're not also getting Caleb Martin. And look, I know I sound ridiculous. If there are any Portland fans listening, I already know they're angry. There's a TikTok going around of a drive-through coffee shop where the guy is just like openly commit. Have you seen this, Chris? The barista is like wallowing in his misery and has to remember that there's like a line of cars because he's asking like, is there any way Lillard comes back? Just like some random coffee shop. So like, I know this sounds.
All my TikToks, Brendon, are Grimace Shake TikToks right now. It's all of them, and
it's dominating the FYP.
And there is probably a Dame Portland fan Grimace Shake crossover TikTok to be made.
If there's not, it's about to be. So I get that sounds ridiculous. Like, but this is a different day and age, and when these guys are expensive, it isn't we get everything. And I guess there's obviously the part of this where do Joe Cronin and co. Are they willing to roll the dice and wait long enough for, what happened with the Nets and Suns to happen? Like, is this something that they're going to roll into the trade deadline with and say, okay, you really need this now, Miami? Like, you're going to give us Caleb Martin and you're going to take Nurkic and we're not taking Herro and you need to find it. Like, maybe, but that takes a lot of balls, honestly. Like, that takes a lot of confidence to just say, we're going to have our season potentially be wrecked by this just to get what we want, especially with the Blazers want to be looked at as good guys. So I don't know if you have more thoughts, but I have one last Miami question.
Yeah, hit me with the last Miami question. I think
is Miami the yeah.
No, it's just unless if Portland wants to be a villain, and I don't think they do, and I don't think they should. This would be a much more interesting thing if they want to just say like bidding wars open, whomever can give us the best thing possible. Dame, you're now a member of the Utah Jazz. Dame, you're now playing with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander in Oklahoma City. Dame, you're now a San Antonio. Like whatever it is, like that's where this ends up. If they get one group, but we're not going to go there. He's gonna end up in Miami. I just kind of think that's where this is going to end up, and it's just going to be like 85 cents on the dollar.
So on that note, if he does, the Heat, this is sort of where I would have their rotation. And I'm going to ask you if they would be the favorites in the Eastern Conference with this rotation.
Okay.
Lillard and Lowry, Josh Richardson at kind of the 2, Jimmy Butler at the 3. I'm assuming, well, I have Caleb Martin and Yusuf Nurkic on here. I'm just kind of including them both for now.
Yeah.
Martin, Highsmith, and Love. And then Bam, Nurkic, and Bryant. Very heavy on bigs and forwards, very light on wings, but a lot of star talent and not an insignificant amount of depth. Are they the favorites over Boston and Milwaukee and everyone else?
I would say yes, but I would also just bank in the fact that they're probably going to find a wing that we've never heard of that gives them 25 minutes and it's awesome.
There's a 40% shooter sitting somewhere in like Iowa that is going to sign with Miami in October and be their starting 2 guard by the end of the year.
That's a fact. Absolutely someone on Sioux Falls last year that like kicked butt, and they're just going to like run it up, and he's going to be great for them. And then our buddy Aram is going to be like buying his jersey, and we're going to be like, Aram, calm down. He's going to be making $25 million in 2 years, and they're going to be really sick of him. It's going to be the Duncan Robinson trick all over again. That's what's going to happen.
Yeah, I think they already signed a couple two-way guys too. Jamal Cain. And the like Jamari Bouye, like that guy is going to shoot 55% on threes for a month.
We're assuming they're giving up the Jamie Yaquez, or I'm mispronouncing his name, I think, but the guy they got from UCLA, correct? We're assuming he's going in this trade.
I would think so. I would say him and Jovic both are a lock to move.
Because I would just be like, oh, he's probably going to be like competent for them as a rookie if they could keep him. But like they probably won't be able to keep him.
All right, let's go to the other potential top of the East team that might fluctuate in or out of that status, Chris, which is the Philadelphia 76ers.
Brett, I don't have a ton to say about James Harden in this case, and here's why.
Okay.
This is entirely just like, I'm not super moved by this. Like, I'm not. Like, Harden asking out, and then, like, maybe he gets, like, coerced into staying in some way, like... The most interesting person in this whole thing to me is Joel Embiid. Like, that's where I go with this. It's not so much about Harden. Like, I think LA probably should do this just to like say this is like the logical next step in like what they are and like cashing in on some of their depth and contracts and just say, all right, big 3, gonna sell some tickets in the new arena. Cool. Like, I get it. And Harden just wants to get paid. I get it. I don't understand, like, there's like information missing about like why Harden's like so aggrieved. It's nothing like there hasn't been a leak about like that. There was the leak that we didn't do this in Stop of the Week, but we should have. There's the thing where he was like mad about what Jalen Green said, about him on Podcast P. Okay, like I just like Harden. I'm just sort of like, okay, like tell me when this is settled. I just want to know what this means for Embiid next year, because if Morey can't like trade him for role players and expect them to just be as good. They've lost Austin Yang. They're going to lose Harden. The role guys you'd be getting back from Philly, like they're good, but are they really elevating Embiid where he needs to go? Like, is it just banking on Maxey to take a star leap at a certain point? This just gets really complicated for Embiid. Harden, it's like, okay, I let's just see where this ends up in a month, and he and I will both like try to enjoy our summers and do our best.
So to me, this feels like Harden running out of leverage once and for all. I just think he has nowhere left to go. He has nothing left to wield here. And Philly, on the other side of this, they're leaking that they want cap space, and I low-key believe it.
I do too. The question is, what does Joe Embiid think about taking a year to wait for cap space? That's it.
So here's the thing, though. On that note, I looked this up. I went back. Basketball Reference has an awesome thing where you can look at the standings by day, which is just like complete sicko shit, if I'm being honest. The fact that there was enough demand for a page like that it exists is disgusting, and basketball fans should be ashamed of themselves, but I used it. First of all, last February before the trade deadline, do you want to know who was number one in the Eastern Conference? Speaking of people that might listen to this and feel depressed, you might know where I'm going if I say that.
Well, there's
number one in the Eastern Conference in early February of 2022. Do you have a guess? Remember, Boston was shitty until like the end of the season, so it wasn't them.
I'm trying to think of someone in our extended universe who would feel like really depressed about this.
The Chicago Bulls were number one in the East in early February 1 year ago, which is insane. But
that feels like a hoax, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, it feels like
that
AI created a fake web page that I found. So shout out to Jack McMullen there. But no, so basically the day that the Sixers traded for James Harden last year, they were 32-22. No Ben Simmons, and obviously Harden had not been acquired yet. They finished 19-9, which was really solid and gave people a lot of optimism, led to Harden sticking around and everything else. But I would say they're at least a little deeper with quality role players now, depending on how PJ Tucker plays. And they, most importantly, have a better version of Tyrese Maxey. So, there's this thing going around now of, is Harden actually going to stay? And I don't think that means is Harden going to end up signing a 4-year max with Philly and everybody goes happily ever after into their ideal future. I think that just means Morey's willing to play hardball here and he just doesn't trade him. And if that probably leads to Harden just sitting out the season, I doubt he's going to play. I'm not Joel Embiid. But if you could sell Joel Embiid on the vision of, you're good enough, big fella. We have a real backup center now in Paul Reed. And Tyrese can score with you. DeAnthony Melton's solid. PJ Tucker's solid. Tobias isn't going anywhere. Let's just keep winning games. We'll figure this James thing out later. And next summer, you tell us who you want in free agency. That's not crazy. And so, to me, if you're following here, this is a long timeline here. But if that kind of situation happens, I feel like the Sixers have two options here, which is get in on the Lillard sweepstakes, because that would be kind of the only thing worth trading for, in my opinion, right now. Maybe there's a Clippers deal that adds their depth if they can get Terrence Mann, and I think Brandon Boston is kind of interesting, Amir Coffey, whatever. Maybe there's some young guys on the Clippers that are worth it. I don't think so. I would say it's either Lillard, and you have to give up Maxey, or you keep Maxey, keep Harris, and you just roll the dice on cap space next offseason. And the guys available then are Pascal, DeJounte Murray, Jaylen Brown, maybe Kawhi, maybe Paul George. It's not terrible. I think that's not a bad option if Daryl has a strong enough relationship with Embiid to be able to say, this is the plan for 1 year. Trust me. That's a lot of trust and a lot of ifs and a lot of, another year wasted of Joel Embiid, but I don't think it's an awful plan if everybody's on board with it.
Should also note that, and I Googled 2024 free agents. Should also note that Anthony Melton's a UFA after the season. Yeah. That's a piece I think they would need to keep. So,
yeah, if they get rid of everybody but Embiid, Maxey, and Jaden Springer, who has his fourth-year rookie option that year, they could have $65 million in cap space in 2024. If they keep Melton, it's like 50, which isn't quite 2 max slots, but it's 1.5. And then if it comes down to it, you're probably getting an upgrade over DeAnthony Melton in that situation. So maybe you do just get rid of him. But yeah, what do you think? Would you get in on the Lillard thing if it meant giving up Maxey?
No, I wouldn't. I'm a big Maxey believer. I think you're just robbing Peter to play Paul. Mm-hmm. To pay Paul, excuse me, if you go that route. You're just really the goal should be to put less of a burden on Embiid. And if you get rid of Maxey just to bring in another guard, you're shortening the window a little bit and you're just raising the pressure on Embiid. And that to me is not a sustainable way. And a year from now, you could be being Embiid's well, can I go to the Knicks? And Dame's well, Embiid's gone. Why am I staying in Philly? You just get in a really tricky situation. Brendon, there's actually something, maybe a pod we should do before the season starts. The Philly is one of the teams I would love to go back and just track their moves the last 6 years because there's just been so much. Because in some ways, Daryl is kind of untangling what Elton Brand did with Al Horford. And he's untangling the process. So it's this whole web of things that is all built to this point. I think that might be worth going back through in detail at some point just to see where we get.
Last thing here on the Clippers side was all that I had. I don't think that they should be in a hurry here either.
No, they have the leverage.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it feels right now their season's not going to rise or fall based on getting James Harden, right? They just re-signed Russell Westbrook. Their season's going to be based on our Kawhi and Paul George healthy when it matters. History tells us probably not, but that's a separate conversation. They're not looking at this as if we get Harden, we're the favorites. That puts us over the top. It's a nice addition. It gives them another star. It gives them more offense, but it's not going to be the end-all, be-all for them. And so what hurry are they in to bid against themselves? Which is really what they're doing. Who else would want James Harden? I think that's actually a harder question than who wants Tyler Herro or Damian Lillard or any of these other things. Who in their right mind would trade things for James Harden when he could be a free agent next year, which is what he's cemented for himself. He's not extension eligible. He cannot sign one. Doesn't matter what team he goes to or anything. He cannot sign an extension. So you're rolling the dice with one of the most volatile dudes in the league, and you have to give stuff up for him. Who's doing that besides the Clippers?
I agree. He should have taken the 3 years, 160 whatever from Brooklyn and worried about it later. That he has cost himself a ton of money. And Brendon, I'm dying for the story about why Houston suddenly just didn't want to get in on James Harden. Dying to kind of understand where that came from. We may never know. I suspect it might have something to do with their head coach more than it does.
Do you think they ever were?
I would suspect ownership was.
Yeah.
And the GM, I suspect, I don't know if Udoka was yeah, let me coach James Harden. That would be my thesis. That would be if I had to present a topic and give you to sell you on it, it would be that I'm not sure Udoka was yeah, that's the guy I want to help me reshape the culture here in Houston.
That is fair.
All right, let's move on to surprising free agency moves. Brendon, I'm going to start with your team first, my number one. Eric Gordon, huh? Took not a lot of money to go play for the Phoenix Suns. The Suns quietly, I think, have had a really good, as far as getting guys for really cheap contracts. I thought Eric Gordon could have got more money and been maybe less of a chance to win a title, but in a really good position for himself and made $8 million, $10 million, whatever. He picked the Suns. That's a guy that could play in crunch time for them, or at least bridge them to crunch time, can provide minutes if Beal misses time, or Book sprains an ankle, or KD misses time. That's a great value signing for Phoenix and a caliber player I did not really think they were gonna be able to get. I can't believe this is my number one, but it kind of like blew my mind that he was like, yeah, I'm just gonna go to Phoenix for like no money.
I mean, the Gordon signing's great. I don't think you can argue that. I mean, I thought, maybe the mid-level at $12 million for Dallas might be what Gordon ended up taking. I'm sure there would have been some mini mid-levels and some biannuals and all these different exceptions that these types of fringe, older guys but still worth something make. I mean, unless you're Brook Lopez and you just get an entire new bag in your mid-30s. I thought that's what Gordon was going to do, but I guess it shows that he's been around a long time. He's been in a lot of different situations, and I guess he really did just want to win. I mean, I guess, too, like that Houston situation of being on a really bad team, and he wanted out, and they couldn't trade him because they were playing hardball with value and whatnot. It feels like that maybe wore on him as well. So I would say that coming to Phoenix, playing a real role, and having a chance to win a title makes a lot of sense. But obviously, it's easy for us to all say, giving up money is easy. I mean, would you start Gordon based on what their rotation is? They have Campaign as a potential starter. They could go big and have, a Kogi or somebody, Keita Bates-Diop, who they just signed, or they could just get a little more kind of steady and sturdy and put the veteran Gordon in there. Would you start Gordon?
Probably not, just because I think you're already skewing. You need some kind of defensive punch in that starting lineup. Like, it can't all be on, like, KD and Aiden. So I would maybe lean more. And I think Frank Vogel might be like, can I start a Kogi? Can I start Yuta Watanabe or someone like that? Like, I think that's the kind of piece. But I think he's a first guy off the bench, high-impact minutes guy. And it wouldn't surprise me if he closes games.
Yeah.
I don't think he starts, but I think he's absolutely in contention to be someone if they want to spread it out. 4 shooters and Aiden on the floor and bomb away. That to me sounds like a really hard thing to stop.
Agreed. My first one, Chris Paul to the Warriors. Surprising move number one. To recap what that deal was, obviously Jordan Poole, in addition to a couple of recent draft picks, plus a 2030 first-round pick and 2 seconds, go to Washington for Chris Paul. So the more that I thought about this one, Chris, the fit offensively and sort of what he might be able to bring to this team in a bench role made more sense to me, because last postseason, you look at what they needed, what they were lacking. They turned the ball over a lot. They did not create kind of downhill offense, and the non-Steph minutes killed them.
Mm-hmm.
Those are all 3 things Chris Paul should be able to help. He's not going to get to the rim, but you could imagine him setting guys up, cutters, a pick and roll with Jonathan Kuminga in the second unit, for instance. Those types of things should help and work for them. But the Warriors, to me, like one of their other bigger problems that maybe doesn't show up in the numbers quite as much is they really missed having size. Like that championship team with Bielitsa and Otto Porter, those guys were important players for them, and it allowed them to not have to rely so much on Kevon Looney to play 40 minutes and just exhaust himself on the offensive glass, and Draymond to be overextended as a, you need to shoot type of guy. And so I would imagine, like, Wiggins probably bounces back. It sounds like they're going to sign Saric, but the real reason I don't like this move is that size problem, and it feels like we're back to square one a little bit with part of the solution to the rotation issues that they are inevitably going to have with how expensive this team is. And by not trading Poole for a couple guys or, whatever, not trading Poole to get more flexibility to go out and sign a different type of player or re-sign somebody, is it's going to make Kerr have to play Kuminga and Moody again. And I just don't know if he wants to do that. And that seems like we're just going to have another year of arguing about whether those guys are ready and what they should or shouldn't be doing in the rotation and everything else. So Chris Paul solves some of their problems. He's an upgrade over Poole, I think, for what they need. But they have bigger issues that they didn't address with this trade that I think might still hold them back.
It's also just going to be really weird to see Chris Paul in a Warriors jersey. Like, I don't think my eyes are going to be able to get used to it. Like, it's going to be Chris Paul like anything he does in a Warriors jersey is just gonna feel weird. Like I thought that with the Rockets too at first, and like like I think of him when I think of him, I think of him in a Clippers jersey. Like when he retires, that's what's gonna go into my head, and then probably the Hornets after that, just because like that was like my youth. Mm-hmm. Suns probably third, but like the Warriors thing is just gonna it's just gonna look weird. Like I also can't picture like Harden in like a Clippers jersey, right? Like it's just gonna like feel weird to me. I also just want to see how much. I think the other feeling out part process, Brendon, that I just don't know how it looks, and we've talked about this a little bit before. How much do they let Chris Paul just like be Chris Paul? Because he is like not exactly wired to play the way the Warriors do. That is not like his natural like way of playing. But like I would love like. People, there's a set team to run called double drag. You set two players at staggered screens for a ball handler. Can you imagine them running that with like Steph and Clay popping out and cutting off of that screen action, and Chris Paul making the decision to what shooter's the most open? Mm-hmm. Like that would be unguardable if they lean into some of the really weird stuff. But how much are they gonna like empower Chris Paul to like be point guard Chris Paul?
Well, so the question there,
just like a cog in the machine.
That gets us into the rotation question, right? One is, does he come off the bench? Period. Which there's actually
he has.
There's been some stuff that he might start though. But either way, like even if he did, whatever it is, if he's gonna play with their best lineup, which would be like the death lineup with Chris Paul, that is such a small lineup. And then it's like, who do you bench? And it's probably Looney, but Chris Paul, Steph Curry, who are both, small and competitive defenders, but not like, that physical, that much of a stopper by any means. Old Clay, Wiggins, and Draymond. Like, who is that lineup stopping? Even with how locked in and keyed in they can be. I don't know. But I like the idea of a bench lineup with Chris, Saric. Those two actually had an awesome two-man game in Phoenix. It's kind of weird and funny that they're going to end up together. And then like Peyton, Kuminga, and Moody or something like that. That's actually kind of a fun idea as a bench unit. And I do think on the bench they'll allow him to cook, to your question. Like I think when he's out there without the stars might actually be the time when he's kind of most empowered. But I am, like you, questioning the fit when he's on the court with the starters. If you just look at it as like, did they upgrade over Poole? I think it's a good move, but I don't think Poole was the only thing wrong with the team. I think that's kind of the way I would put it.
Bingo. Brendon, you're very smart. All right, my number 2. You're my guy, Brendon. I'm always just gonna gas you up as much as I can. This is not so much a surprise for me because I think this is what it was coming, but I'm a little skeptical. So LaMelo Ball, huh? LaMelo Ball got the max rookie extension.
5 years,
by the way, just seeing
207. Yeah.
Yeah. Anthony Edwards go up to 260.
I think Balls would be that too. I'm sure it has the escalators in it if they get All NBA or MVP or whatever.
I am just a little bit of a LaMelo Ball skeptic. I think he certainly has tons of talent, tons of upside, tons of ability, has great size. I just am a little bit unsure that he is like we have seen him in a situation. And some of this is like the Hornets' fault, not really his fault. But it just feels like he is like a stat, like it's been like heavy stat guy, not like driving winning guy. And he's a horrific defender. Like I don't
know about a horrific defender. I think he can be a fine horrific defender, or a fine team defender. if you're like 6'7" with long arms, you should be able to survive on D. And he's like pretty fluid as a mover.
Yeah, it's just I don't think he's gotten there yet. Last year, I know 36 games, injury stuff, which, by the way, he played 51 games as a rookie, played 75 in year 2, and then only played 36 last year. Like, are there injury concerns with LaMelo? I think that's fair to wonder.
Yeah.
Last year, rated out analytically as his worst defensive season for whatever that is worth. I am just a little bit skeptical. And, look, he's 21. He'll be 22 at the end of the summer. You mentioned the size, the shot making, the passing is all there. I am just a little bit this is just like you've committed to this being your guy, and it's now kind of on him to help shepherd them in a different direction. And like, whereas like with Ant, I'm just kind of sure he's going to handle whatever nonsense the Wolves kind of put him in, and he's going to make them great. And I think he's worth that contract. LaMelo, I just need to see that actually happen before I'm like, yeah, that guy's actually like a bona fide max player.
Yeah,
I would put
I don't
in a
think
different way. Desmond Bane, I would have similar skepticism that Desmond Bane is worth the money he got as well.
Desmond Bane inspired far too much Twitter debate, thanks to one Matt Moore. Not necessary. It's okay. LaMelo Ball, as boring of an analysis as it might be, it is also just something where it's the Charlotte Hornets, and you absolutely
they have a new
cannot
owner.
let that guy walk. It just is what it is. You get anybody even close to that talented in the door, and you pay them every dollar you can until they leave. I mean, that's just sort of what you have to do. I think the defense, it's kind of a test of how are you supposed to evaluate the defense when a player is having to do things that they ideally wouldn't have to do on a good team, right? So it's like, how can he be a good team defender when there is no team defense in place, right? And like maybe there's a little bit of optimism because they were notably, as everybody has talked about who's mentioned Charlotte recently, like they were a great defense down the stretch of the season. Now it was like fake March and April basketball, but they actually locked down and there's some talent there to start to turn the corner, so maybe that helps. But I just think
Steve Clifford,
you gotta pay.
Baby.
Steve Clifford doing his thing.
This roster, just real quick, is not particularly great either. I think it's kind of reprehensible to stay in the Miles Bridges business. I wouldn't feel good about that if I'm a Hornets fan. I understand, whatever. Maybe they trade him because he just signed his, offer sheet or whatever.
No trade clause though. When you sign that, so they're in a real mess. They had their out was to not extend him the qualifying offer. They did it, so now they are in the bed of their own making. Yeah,
should have got out of the business. The Hayward thing didn't totally work. They still have Rozier. We'll see what happens with Brandon Miller. That roster is not exactly helping LaMelo Ball, but it's on him more. And they missed on the Boone pick. It feels like. It is on him more than anybody else to shepherd them into the future, and that's a lot to ask of LaMelo Ball based on what we've seen of him so far. What's your next one?
$51 million in cap space next year, Chris. Maybe someone's coming to Charlotte. All right, my next one.
Okay, sure. Okay.
Speaking of places that people are unlikely to go and why you have to pay, the Sacramento Kings extending Domantas Sabonis for what is the extension amount is 4 years, $191.4 million. I took surprise as pretty negative, unfortunately, but
yeah, I think that's fair though.
Yeah,
I don't think that's like unreasonable to think it that way.
So, already 27 years old, pretty durable, tough, makes people better on offense and affects the game in important ways as a passer, an offensive rebounder, an interior scorer. But again, 27, not much upside to continue to improve, in my opinion. Can't space the floor. I think actually has regressed as a shooter, probably just from a mentality standpoint. There were times when the Warriors were leaving him open in the mid-range and he looked uncomfortable, whereas he started his career bombing threes next to Russell Westbrook. It's bizarre that he looked so uncomfortable shooting the ball. So maybe it can get back to respectable, but I don't think he's going to be a good shooter ever. And he's one of the worst defenders in the NBA. There's just not a way to slice that positively. He has to play center because he can't guard forwards, but he does not protect the rim and, doesn't switch, which goes back to not being able to defend forwards or smaller players. And the Kings are just locking him in way above market rate. I don't think Domantas Sabonis, if he had hit free agency, is getting $40+ million a year. Maybe I'm wrong. Teams are always willing to offer big deals. We just saw Fred VanVleet get a bunch of money. But to me, it just comes down to, there is a difference between appreciating the return to relevancy and rewarding the guys who kind of got you there and just overpaying for the good vibes of a great season. And it feels like that's kind of what they did here.
Yeah, and I was a little surprised. I mean, maybe just they found out, Kuzma was going to get that offer from DC. Maybe preferred to stay there. Maybe some of the trade options kind of fell dry. I know they brought over that guy from the EuroLeague MVP to their team, and I know there's some optimism around him. But to me, this was signaled when they re-signed Harrison Barnes. That was clearly the guy that I think if you wanted to go spend on an upgrade, even with banking on Murray's improvement, that was probably the spot that you would say, okay, let's pay to upgrade here and figure it out, or you make a Beal trade or something like that. And obviously Beal dictated where he wanted to go. He ended up in Phoenix. Congratulations to you, Brendon, for getting to cover just an absolutely. You never have to do draft prep, I guess, for a long time for the Suns. Until 2030, it's 2 presidential cycles. But I think the Barnes thing was the signal that it's this is just going to be run it back season for the Kings, and that puts a lot of pressure on Fox to replicate what he did last year. That puts pressure on Sabonis, assuming his hand is healthy, to kind of do a lot of what he did last year. This becomes a really, really complicated thing for him to do, for them as a team to do over and over again. Even if I like some of the moves, even if I would bank on improvement if I were them, it's not a lock that all just kind of works out. History, I don't think in any sport, banking on things just getting better year over year ever works. Someone's going to get hurt. You're going to have some stagnation. You're going to have it up and down a roller coaster. So I think just assuming in their case, maybe they just felt they got put into this spot, but it's really hard to project out that things just won't figure themselves out.
Well, here's the thing. So Keegan Murray's going to get better. I'm not sure who else is. Maybe Kessler Edwards, on a minimum. I just Davion Mitchell if he keeps coming along, but Malik Monk, Kevin Herro, those guys are Fox is 25. Would you assume Fox is done improving in some way? I think Fox can get better. I also think that there is a not zero chance that he had an outlier shooting season last season and might actually regress. I mean, the dude shot 55% from mid-range. That's just out of this world compared to what he had been.
So this is a good point. So 58.4% on 2-pointers last year. He had never been higher than 53.9 before that. And the year before, in 21-22, he was 52.4. So this was that's a significant
he was
leap.
77% at the rim compared to 65 the previous year, and 51% from mid-range compared to 46 the year before that, and he still doesn't hit his threes.
Yeah.
I'm not saying he won't improve, but I think that there's an equal chance that he actually dips back down as a shooter, that he does get better.
Yeah, especially because he's not the highest volume free throw guy, 6 a game last year. You almost would want him to get to the line more, but to kind of maybe compensate for some of that, but that doesn't feel super there. I agree with you on this. What I would say with the Sabonis thing is I also kind of just get why they did it. I get all of this. I get all of the things. There's not really, even if there's moves, Brendon, that surprise me or I can kind of understand why 95% of these moves have happened or why things have gone a certain way. I get why the Kings did the Sabonis thing. It's you reward the guy who I think is a big part of their culture and has really embraced being there. But it does also kind of put you in a spot. And I guess we also, this is another one of those stories I would love to read after the fact. How did the Kuzma stuff just never materialize for them? Was there not a trade that materialized for them that they could use the cap space on in a certain way? And they just feel after, not tampering, but talking to people before the free agency opened, did they just kind of learn it's okay, we don't have a choice but to run this back, and maybe it's on trading Barnes in 6 months and to find our upgrade? Well,
so I hear you on there probably wasn't a better pathway if all of that played out the way that it did than just running it back. And we can say, oh, Grant Williams, and it's okay, I mean, at the end of the day, are you getting 2% better if you bring in Grant Williams over Harrison Barnes? I think you are picking nits at a certain point. So you're absolutely right. Running it back makes a lot of sense. It's not so much the issue. My issue is not that they used the cap space they created to get Sabonis. My issue is that they extended him for 4 more years beyond that.
Yeah.
For 40 to almost 50 by the end of it $1 million. That's the issue that I have. It's not giving the $8 extra million this season, which makes perfect sense because he was only getting paid $22 million. That is not even close to all-star level.
Bargain, yeah.
So I get rewarding him. They had money to do it. Why not? It's more the extra 4 years, 191 beyond that, where it's just like, I just straight up don't know if he'll be worth that. So I don't know why you would be in such a hurry. Why not do 2 years beyond this one, or one, or what, something where you're still giving the dude a lot of money to reward him for what he did, but you're not kind of like trapping yourself into the deal. We'll see how it goes, though. I think the Kings are going to be good next year. I don't think it's a terrible, handicapping, awful move. It's just something they didn't have to do, and they did it anyway.
Yeah, for a guy that is like all-star level, but not like a lock to necessarily be an all-star year after year after year. All right, my last one, Brendon. It's very quick because I don't know what there's to say about it other than the fact that I can't believe someone didn't like give Austin Reaves more than what he got with the Lakers. He got 4 years, $56 million. That is, I believe, is that not less annually year over year than Rui Hachimura got?
I think Hachimura got 51. But he got 3.
Yeah, over 3.
Yeah, you're
right.
He
got 3. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. So like that doesn't make sense to me. Reaves is a better player. Reaves is the third best player in the Lakers.
Oh yeah,
he is. I don't understand how he got 456. I know he got a player option in year 3. I understand he's an RFA and like the RFA market does suppress value for guys. I get all of that. Why did the Spurs? Why did the Pistons? Why did one of these other teams with cap space? Not just to mess with the Lakers. I do not understand. Like the Rockets? Like, why not? Why not just offer like them the money and just mess with the Lakers? They're going to match it. They don't have a choice. They're over a barrel. They've signaled for months they were going to match it. Maybe that's why. Maybe there's some agent relation stuff that, like, it's not, like, that. But I just don't understand why a team didn't look at Reaves and say he's worth 4 for 100.
Yeah.
4 for 90, something. Throw in some backloading, do some stuff to make it a quirky contract, give him a player option, whatever. And instead he goes back to the Lakers on a bargain. Good for the Lakers, good for LeBron, and good for AD to get this guy back at a really good price. I don't understand why the market for him wasn't higher based on how good we know he is.
Yeah, he's making $12 million in year 1.
That's MLE money. What are we doing?
He's making less than the MLE.
What are we?
Yeah.
I don't understand this. I do not understand how we ended up in a world, Brendon, where Rui Hachimura, who had a great playoffs, proved himself, acquitted himself. I don't understand how he ended up getting more money year over year than Austin Reaves did. When Austin Reaves is a better player, who plays with the ball in his hands, who makes shots, who takes pressure off of LeBron James so LeBron doesn't have to grind himself into dust to help them manage the offense. Like that is so valuable.
Yeah.
It's a really valuable skill set, and no other team was like, yeah, we'll try. F it. Like the Pistons traded for Joe Harris, and you're telling me that they couldn't have executed that a couple of days later and instead just throwing money at Reaves to maybe say hypothetically play with Cade and at least mess with the Lakers a little bit? I don't get this.
So the Pistons one is actually my last one, so it'll translate us or transition us perfectly. D'Angelo Russell is making more than both, which is also just a funny little part of this.
Is he getting like if we get like odds from BetMGM like by the trade like in October that it's like player most likely to be traded by the deadline, yes or no, D'Lo's got to be like minus odds.
Oh yeah,
right?
that's just tradable salary. I mean, the thing with speaking of Lakers salaries though is like part of this that's crazy to me is even if you know the Lakers are going to match, which they signaled from the jump, and I have no doubt that they would, the Lakers are cheap. This is not a blow through the second apron team. This is not a Golden State Warriors, Clippers, Bucks, Suns type of organization. Like, they'll pay the tax, but they don't want to pay the repeater tax.
This is a PPP loan team, Brendon.
Yes, it is. And so, like, yeah, I guess if you're a team with cap space that was thinking about this, there's an easy reason why you maybe don't do it, which is, okay, they're going to match. But even if the only thing you get out of it is screw the Lakers a little bit and get them closer to the luxury tax, I don't know why you would not just do that. Even that makes plenty of sense, and we know teams have issues with the Lakers, and rightly so. They get guys on cheap contracts that could go elsewhere all the time, so why not screw them back here a little bit? I have a question for you. One target that I think evaporated before we get to the Pistons on the Reaves side of things. If you're the Utah Jazz, trade for John Collins or offer Austin Reaves an offer sheet?
Offer Austin Reaves an offer sheet.
I agree, but I guess that's a perfect illustration of the thing that teams were dealing with here, which is like, in the Collins case, you actually get a player. In the Reaves case, you probably don't. right? Because he's just going to go back to
and
LA.
you control one and you control one and you don't control the other one. That simple as that. Like, you can control the trade to some degree. You can't control RFA. I mean, like we've known Brendon for the last however long that RFA just doesn't exist in the same way it used to anymore.
Yeah.
It like is kind of like no man's land. If you're someone who goes into RFA, you're gonna get squeezed financially.
Just ask Grant Williams, who's probably going to go back to the Celtics on like a really cheap deal, it seems like at this point.
Yeah.
All right, on to the Pistons, my last one here. I don't understand what they did whatsoever. They traded a second-round pick for Monte Morris, and I believe they got 2 seconds and Joe Harris in order, and I think they just traded out cash in order to take an expensive player off of Brooklyn's hands. It seems like the agreement there was, hey, don't sign Cam Johnson to an offer sheet because we're just going to match it. Have another forward shooter instead. We have one for you who's expiring. Take him. He's similar, and don't ask us any questions. And the Pistons said okay. One, I would have just offered Cam Johnson like a freakish amount of money just to see what happens.
I would have too.
And so that's like part of my frustration with it overall. As far as Monte Morris, I don't understand bringing in another point guard when they already kind of had too many. I mean, maybe, it's an opportunity to not have to bring Cade along so quickly. But they have Ivy, they have Cade. Maybe Killian Hayes just isn't part of their future plans, so they don't care about boxing him out of playing time. I think Asar Thompson is probably somebody who will want some reps, at least, as a second side creator, if nothing else. I get wanting an adult point guard in the room. I just don't know if that guy makes sense to play. And so, set aside the fit of individual players here, because I think those guys will both help the team. It's not even that they're bad players or anything, Harris and Morris. But I just kind of see this Pistons team as headed toward the same issue they had last year, where they hire Monty Williams that at the salary they did, which brings with it like a pretty obvious pressure or momentum toward trying to win more. And if you create that environment, you're asking the coach to play veteran players. I mean, we just saw Houston do an extreme version of that, but the Pistons didn't seem like they're willing to commit to it. So maybe I'm wrong and Monty Williams just plays the young guys and he's really ready to just kind of build the painful way and let those guys improve naturally. But it seems like what might happen, what I would imagine could happen, is he's just going to defer to veteran guys who are not very good, all things considered, and they're going to be just kind of caught in no man's land where they're not maximizing development, but they're also not maximizing winning, and they're just kind of like spoon-feeding Monte Morris and Bojan Bogdanovic and Joe Harris a bunch of minutes to go 30 and 52 next year. And that feels like it would be a pretty big mistake if you're just trapped between those two options.
So I saw the Pistons late in the season in person, and it was one of the most helpless scenes of basketball, Brendon, that I've ever seen in person in a long time. It was miserable. Like they had no reason to be there. It was clearly just cardio, and I felt really bad for Bojan Bogdanovic. Just I know he got a lot of money, but it's what are you doing on this team? So I agree with you, but I also wonder if the fear of just being in that situation again and not being in a situation where Cade is playing more impactful basketball and Monty is not getting to kind of instill competitiveness in them with vets. That's tricky. All right, Brendon, real quick, let's end on one last thing. Team USA roster's out. Let's each give our bet. This was your idea. I want to give you credit. Best lineup Team USA can run out.
You go first.
Do you want me to go first? You want to go first? Okay. I have two options in our planning sheet, and I've decided I'm going to go with Halliburton, Edwards, Ingram, Bridges, and Triple J. You got two big forwards. You got Hallie and Edwards to be big guards and creators. And Hallie can play off the ball. Halliburton can play off the ball of Edwards at times and do that stuff. And Triple J, I think, is the lock to be in these lineups. He's the best center on the roster by far. He can switch everything. I think this five can switch just about anything. It's dynamic. It's athletic. It can play fast. Ingram and Edwards can be the half-court creators as much as you need, just someone to get a tough bucket here and there. So to me, that's the one. The other one would have been Brunson, Halliburton, Ingram, Bridges, in Triple J, or if you wanted to slide Bridges out and put Ant in, I could go with that option as well.
All right, just for the sake of disagreement here.
You're gonna put like Walker Kessler in here?
So
Oh my, you are?
maybe.
Okay.
I'm gonna for the sake of consideration. Your first one is probably the most realistic. Halliburton, Ant, Ingram, Bridges, Jaren. Side note, pretty risky for Ingram and Jaren to be playing in this thing. Especially if they're going to be kind of workhorses like we think. Those guys don't exactly have like the cleanest bill of health, so I would be a little bit nervous if I'm their teams. I mean, happy for those guys. Representing your country is dope, but we'll see. Reaves, Ant, Mikal, Jaren, Kessler. I think that Reaves is a better defender than Halliburton. And I like having size, especially in the reason I bring this up, honestly, is not just to like be obnoxious, but they're going to be going against big teams. Gobert, Jokic, Giannis potentially, depending on how things play out. You know, I don't know how good Greece is going to be, but you know, Slovenia always has bigs. Spain always has bigs. So I think Kessler's going to play more than we realize. I don't think this is going to be just Jaren at center for, 75% of every game, even if that's like the most NBA type lineup. Like, they're going to need to play bigs. And I honestly think Halliburton, I'm going to be really intrigued by him because he seems like a guy who some of these European guards that are just going to mash him, I could see him struggling, to be honest, because he is just, he's not a good defender right now, whether we love him or not.
Yeah, he's kind of small. That's why I wonder, like, Brunson might get some of these in close games just because, like, I think Brunson's not going to get pushed around like that. He's bulky. He's strong. Not a great defender either, but, like, a little more physically imposing. Very excited for the World Cup. Very excited.
Also, Kerr.
I was excited for this one. Yeah.
Then the last one when it was just, like, Celtics Central. That sucked. And they lost. They got, like, bronze, right?
Yeah, embarrassment.
The other thing to remember is Steve Kerr's the coach. So, like, even if you're dreaming up, like, a Halliburton, Jaren pick and pop, like, that's not how Steve Kerr's going to play. So, get ready to be frustrated by he's just going to play, like, Cam Johnson 105% of the available minutes just to have a shooter to do some split cuts.
All of America is going to become Warriors Twitter, just demanding that more Steve Kerr runs more pick and roll.
Stop playing. Good thing they actually only have one traditional center because Kerr would play 3 if he could.
Should have got like Draymond on this team.
Actually,
honestly.
Quick question as we close out. Why did Cat not play in this?
I mean, Cat's already made. He's already left the mark on the game, Brendon. What more does he have to accomplish?
I really was not trying to trash Cat with that. It was a real question, but maybe it is just the injury thing.
It probably is, but it's also just like, I don't know. I think I'd rather have these bigs than Cat.
You'd rather you made fun of me for including Walker Kessler, and now you're telling me you'd rather have him than Towns?
Towns defensively, internationally, would just get like ruined.
Like a high dribble handoff, and Towns is just spinning around and ankle just broken in game number 1. Yeah.
Yeah. Let Ant have a summer where he just can play with centers who aren't.
Yeah.
Karl Anthony Towns, who's like is a good player, but it's just like, oh my god, like the vibes around Cat for me are very low.
It's just like Towns could have easily taken the Portis spot, and everybody would have been for the better. I don't know. It's just weird.
That's probably true, but it probably is the injury thing.
People just ask like, why does Team USA struggle to get centers every year? And every year I think about Towns, and I'm like, well, we have one, and he just doesn't play in these things. And Bam played in the last one, but he's like 6'9", so.
Well, actually, if I'm remembering correctly, isn't Towns tied to Puerto Rico? Or Dominican Republic? Yeah, I think he's tied to the Dominican Republic.
Huh.
I know because he played for them at 16. I'm pretty sure he's Dominican Republic.
He is Dominican. You're definitely right there. And I just assumed he would have been eligible for Team USA, but I guess maybe you're right.
Okay,
he chose them.
So I Googled this, and he says he wants to play for them at the World Cup. This was in March. He wants to play for the Dominican in March. That's what he said in March.
Well, that would answer my question. That's what I get for not doing research.
Yeah, that's okay. That's why pops into my brain, Brendon. That's where it goes. Yeah, there's an article on Anscape from 2017 about why he turned on USA Basketball for the Dominican Republic, written by Mark Spears. Can I read you the first quote? It's really funny, then we'll get out of here. I know you gotta go. This is the first quote in this, and like I mean this is like a cool quote. Earnestly, it's just very funny because it's about food, and it's just funny to me that this is like the lead quote in this story. I love arroz con pollo. I keep it really simple and plain to the point. My mom, well, R.I.P., makes some of the best chicken and rice, and I know why. She makes it how my grandmother makes it, and the recipe is passed down. There's nothing better than having some of mom's homemade cooking. That's actually very sad. It's just like funny that the quote is arroz con pollo.
It is a very, well, I'll keep it to myself. That was not going to be town slander. It was going to be slander of how articles are sometimes written, but I will keep that to myself. I feel like Towns is a big family guy. I do get it.
Yeah.
It is cool to be kind of the only one. Unless you're Paolo Banchero, who just said F you to the Italians, it is pretty cool to be kind of the one, superstar NBA player on your team. I mean, Giannis did it, and different guys have done it. It sounds like Embiid might even go to France over the U.S., so we'll see how everything plays out with the big men, but I guess that does explain it. I just selfishly would like an actual center, so let's just pray that Walker Kessler gets these reps in and he can be at like the next 4 Olympics.
Mitchell Rob. Maybe get someone. Could you call that Mitch Rob or
No.
Allen,
I mean, long term, my goal is Chet. Chet's going to be our 7-foot big man in the
Mobley.
World
Mobley.
Cup. Sure. So it's really just patience. We just got to wait.
Yeah. Need Chet to play NBA basketball. Need Mobley to get in the weight room and get some squats in.
Yeah.
All right, let's end there. I'm Chris Manning. That is Brendon Kleen. Thanks again to Jake Stevens and Dillon Heiser for producing. Thanks to our friends at Homage. Click the link below. Buy some for yourself, and some money comes back to us. Talk to you guys next time later in the week. Have a great 4th of July.